All right. First of all, I'd like to thank you for helping to participate in this virtual panel to discuss the future of missions and to provide some context to our online class. These past number of weeks, we've been reviewing the history of the Christian church and how God has been using the church for missions. For the benefit of our panelists, we've been using the term church in the context of this teaching series to describe the universal church, the assembly of believers around the world. And this panel is entitled The Future of Missions. And so we hope to get some insights on where you see the future of missions is headed. So for those of us here who may or may not know you, maybe you can please describe a little bit about yourself and where you come from, a little bit about your background, both spiritual and physical, and where you are now, and sort of what is your current role in the Christian church, and what is it that you're doing these days.
Okay, my name is Dick. My wife, who's sitting next to me, her name is Karen. We have two children, two girls. The older one is Noel, and the second one is Pascal. And so here we are. I would like to start first. I'm on Vietnam, so a very different background. So my family left Vietnam when I was at the age of 10. So I lived in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and that's where I learned most of my Mandarin. So at the age of 12, we moved to Montreal, where I grew up. So I went to school in Montreal. I went to high school, CEGEP, and also university. Uh, at university, I was majoring in film. And at the end of my studies, fortunately, I did not go up to Hollywood, but God called me and I went to Regina. And that's where I studied theology. I started to work as a youth pastor in Montreal and then moved to Ottawa, became an English speaking pastor for 7.5 years. And in 1996, my family, Karen and I, we moved to France as international workers.
I was, I'm also Chinese, and but born in Canada. And my parents are from Taiwan. Was born in China and fled communism and grew up in Taiwan, and then emigrated to Canada in 1967. So I was also born in Montreal, and that's where I also studied. Then I went away to university, uh, following your Sunday school teacher, Jimmy, to Waterloo, where I studied accounting. And then after graduation, I got married. We got married. Ended up in Ottawa. And while Dick was pastoring, I continued to work and also study. And then I also went on to complete a law degree and then got called to the bar. And then because of our call to do overseas mission work, so we decided to kind of set roots overseas in France as our base.
So we were sent to France. First of all, is to plant churches. So we are church planters, planting churches among the diaspora who are living in France, mainly in Paris, and and since France is part of the European Union country, and so our mandate will expand to the neighboring European countries. So as you may know that in France, we have a Chinese population of similar to Toronto, close to 500,000 to 600,000. Among the 30 plus Chinese churches, perhaps there are less than 5 to 7,000 Chinese Christians. So here you see a big contrast. Close to being some Chinese Christians. Also plant churches in neighboring countries, Netherlands, Germany, England, part of Spain, and also God also enabled us to go down south to North Africa, and as well further east to the Middle East region as well.
And because there are elder French territories in the Caribbean, we've also started to help churches in those outer territories where they speak French. And we've also brought short-term mission teams to French-speaking Africa. So because of that French cultural connection, we're able to bring teams, locally born Chinese, to go to African French-speaking countries and the Caribbean French outer territories. So we work with the Chinese diaspora, the first and subsequent generations. So the older generation, the new immigrants or refugees that came in the 70s from Vietnam or Cambodia, Laos, so Southeast Asia. So not just mainland China or Taiwan or Hong Kong. So a little bit different from North Africa Chinese immigration population.
What are some of the challenges in sort of working cross-culturally?
I think because we're both Chinese, but Dick was born in Vietnam. He's lived in Hong Kong, Taiwan, then immigrated to Canada. I'm Chinese, but yet I was born in Canada. So we have Chinese roots, but yet we've been exposed or we've grown up with lots of cultures. We both grew up in Canada. Sure.
Do you see some of the tools or aids that we have today, sort of, or possibly in the future, helping to mitigate some of the challenges that you're facing?
Well, I think the fact that many of your students and or their children have learned a different language or many languages. So not only do we speak English, we speak French, we speak Chinese. We are equipped to do cross-cultural work or multicultural work. And the fact that we are from immigrant families and we are visible minorities, it allows us to understand the context of where the communities have come from, because a lot of the diasporas are immigrants and have grown up being visible minorities and having to learn to integrate. So I think from that, we have lots of advantages, or we're already well equipped in some sense to do cross-cultural missions. And I think one of the questions, I think number 6, where you say by 2050, a lot of our population will be in urban cities. As immigrants and growing up in big cities like Paris or Toronto or Montreal or others, I think we also know the difficulties and challenges of being an immigrant in these big cities and hardworking blue-collar families. So because of that, I think we're well equipped.
or prepared, or we have an understanding, an empathy, a sympathy for the community that we want to reach out to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I put that question in there about urban ministry. I think the latest stats are pushing that you know, as opposed to in the past where most people are living in rural settings, the trend is that there's going to be more and more people living in urban centers. And so I think your placement in one of these major urban centers is really where the people are going to be. Now, do you see like that as part of a sort of an overall sort of mission strategy?
Yes, actually, when we first came over to France, specifically stationed in Paris, I think we would like to concentrate our work mostly on Western European countries at first, and because the target um, uh, audience, audience are the Chinese diaspora, and as you and I we know that Chinese would like to go to places where their children can establish uh, their family and receive good education, and then so the people living uh, in the Western European countries uh, are here to stay for long terms, just like in North America. So they're not transients. And then we can uh, uh, mobilize these churches on the Western Front uh, and can move them forward to the Eastern blocs. So now there's no longer Eastern blocs. So we have the EU as a community. So among the EUs, we have 4 churches now. So out of which there are approximately 28 Chinese Alliance churches. But there are more than actually 1.8 to 2 million Chinese living in the EU community. And as you can see, there are approximately 1.5, if I'm correct, Chinese living in Canada. Number for us to do the job. As we also study the model from Paul in the book of Acts, his focus on doing mission is the big cities, uh, uh, Ephesus, Corinth, Philippi, and Rome, and Athens. So these are the cities where Paul had in mind to reach out to those who are uh, in the academic field. Okay.
Finally, maybe the last question, and this is an open-ended question, really. How do you see God using the church in His mission for humanity?
Through scripture, I see that the church is a very important body where Christ is the head, but the church is Christ's representative on earth. And it's unless we work together as church with a big C, and unless we work with local churches with a little c, mission work is not reproducing. Because we've seen, some strategies to, let's say, open a coffee house focus on education, doing ministries, wells, building homes, or even health teams, all very crucial. Gospel is lived out in these good works.
Sorry, we missed the last little part.
All these are good works.
Oh, I think I said something like, all these things I mentioned, whether it's health or marketplace or education, these are all good works that Christians should be involved in, and it's the gospel. It's that cup of water that we offer with the gospel. I mean, it is part of the gospel. It's not just talking the gospel, but it's actually helping and loving a neighbor. However, I've seen that when we don't do these good works in conjunction with a local church and closely work with local churches, then that work doesn't have effect on eternal salvation. Because I think the government and society in general offers these things, and they do it well. I mean, that's their role as a government, offer good health, good education, and we can never compete with those things. But I don't even think I think our primary purpose is to teach the Bible well, disciple, and these have eternal value. So if we put too much focus on those good works, which are very valuable and necessary, but if we put too much focus on that and not in close with local churches, then we are not bringing we are not introducing to people Christ, which has the eternal value, which can bring the peace and joy and hope, where health and education and having a good job, that is not going to give them that peace and joy and hope. So local churches are so vital, and we need to work very closely with the local church.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Yeah. Any other final remarks?
I think also it is important to when we talk about mission, it is important. There are two main factors. Yes, prayer is the bottom, the base that the foundation we should never neglect. But on top of that, there's money. Mission work cannot accomplish without money. Giving money, and also how we spend money. And the other aspect we need to also emphasize is the fruitfulness, the result, the end product. I think the two should go hand in hand together. And sometimes we often just talk about this, and without this, and that is not sufficient. And so by doing this without that, it's also impossible. And so what we would like to encourage the Sunday school class students, every one of you, would consider, yes, where is God's calling upon you during this stage of your life? You may not be able to go out as a missionaries, as a full-time missionaries, or not even engage in a short-term mission, short-term or mid-term, but perhaps you can give. And you can give your tithing, and you can give whatever God has blessed you, your money, your time, your energy, your gift. Even I think we think of there are many things they can contribute to the website design, and as well also ask concern about how the missionaries are doing out on the field. Care for the workers who are who has been sent by the churches, by the CMA, and find out how the works are they making progress? Are there obstacles? Are there barriers? Are they facing challenges? And pray for them. So the two, I think we should not to neglect these two aspects.
Absolutely.
And I think reality has hit in for mission work with this virus. Traveling is going to be more and more difficult and unsafe. And the other reality is because we've been working as missionaries for 20 plus years now, and we've seen teams come for maybe one short-term mission trip, maybe a second, but unless we find, and we were talking about the local church and how the local church plays a role in mission work, especially in the future, we sense that a long-term commitment to a certain church or a certain city or a certain missionary couple is much more effective than just go another place and it's superficial and there's no long-term effect. And it's very draining for the international worker to host teams like that. Because in Europe, for example, for a team to come, it's very difficult to find places to stay, right? It's not like North America where most of us would have a house with a basement and 2 or 3 washrooms, and you can host 1, 2, or 3 people for a few days. In Europe, it's costly and it's not even possible in our apartments. So there's a cost involved in doing that type of mission work. And for teams to be hosted for 1 week is draining, and sometimes it just touches a very superficial relationship between the 2 local churches. So we've kind of sensed over the years that unless a North American local church adopts a city, adopts a missionary couple, adopts a project, and commits to it for at least 3 years, I really don't know if it's worth your vacation time and the money you spend into that for it to be a very fruitful mission work. And I think I would encourage churches like your church to look for a project, a missionary couple, or a city that you feel you have a cultural connection to, or
or less barriers to, and get to know the local churches, and through the missionary know what the needs really are, and what the strategy is, and you fit in, and how you can fit into that strategy.
Mhm.
Because just coming for 2 weekends, you know, urban ministry, you guys live in Toronto, we live in Paris. People are so busy.
Mhm.
I hate to say this, but for us to advertise, oh, a team is coming from Canada, is no big deal anymore. It used to be,
Mhm.
right? It used to be. They all wanted to learn English, right? They all wanted to have a VBS program.
Mhm.
But, there are so many cultural events going on in the city. Why would they want to put their kid in this, church program that is not quite up to. So things have to be done well, and I think working with a local church and really having a long-term relationship with the people and with the leaders, the workers, and planning it out well and thoroughly will have the effect, the fruit, that mission work can have.
Mhm.
Talking about the future of missions and the involvement of 20 to 50-year-olds in missions is quite interesting, because that's the period where most of us are most busy. We are just starting a career, starting a family, have kids that we need to, and we have jobs that only give us 1, maybe 2 weeks of vacation, right?
Mhm.
So to me, that age group is not necessarily the best group to be on short-term mission trips. I think the group 20 to 50, they have been called because they've been gifted to become an engineer, a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, computer high tech. They have been gifted by God with good jobs. So that means their role at that time within the body, we were talking about the body and the
Mhm.
church, and each at that period of time, maybe their priority calling in terms of mission involvement is tithing,
Mhm.
because they don't have the vacation, they don't have the time, they're busy with their careers, and they're busy with their family and children. So their calling in that period of time, that season of life that God maybe is calling them to do, is to be the financial supporters of those who are available to go, or those who are available to do the work, whether it's the short-term teams, or whether it's, oh, there's a project overseas, or there's a couple doing this with these churches. I'm going to tithe into that
Mhm.
for this season of my life, because that's what I can do. And that's what I'm called to do, because I'm called to be an engineer during those years. So that's kind of what I sense, and what I feel in terms of that age group. But when I say that, I don't say it meaning that you're tithing but not being good stewards, in the sense of
Mhm.
asking the right questions. Where is my money going? How is it being used? What are the fruits of this? Because as a steward, and for example, a financial steward, and to have good stewardship, it's just like investing in RSPs or whatever fund.
Mhm.
You have to have wisdom, but to be generous, because that's what you're called to do and be in that season of life. So to just add to future of missions, I think if we're talking about short-term mission teams, trips for the younger ones who have long vacations, who are gifted in website, music, learning new languages, that should be encouraged. But again, with the virus, that might be limited again.
Mhm.
And then the older ones who are early retirement, empty nesters. So those are the two that we should be supporting or encouraging, I think, which is, I think, more reasonable to expect. And then to support financially and with prayer, those who are already committed.
Yeah, no, it's
Where
good.
I ended or where I got cut off.
Yeah, what I caught was that you caught the different age groups, the ones that are younger that have the time to spend, as well as the older, the sort of the pre-retirement or early retirement group, as the ones that are really be pushed, encouraged to spend that time well.
And
The
empty nesters
hmm
too.
Yeah, for
So the
sure.
middle group, they're called to be stewards and probably of their money.
Hmm
That's their tithing. But to be wise in that, though,
hmm
there are so many projects out there, so many good-looking reports out there, but you need to be wise. And I say that with lots of I don't know what to say,
Wisdom,
or experience.
experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Understood.
yeah.
Yeah.
Same guy who came up with the 1040 window concept. A few years ago, he saw um, historically in terms of mission work and mission movement, and what he felt the future of missions and the greatest least reached people group would be what he termed now the 414 window or the 414 movement. What that means, or what he meant, was children between the ages of 4 and 14
Interesting.
are the least reached people group. So we're not talking about a 1040 window of Africans. We're not talking about an ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about all ethnicities, and we're talking about every child between the ages of 4 and 14 years old. They are the largest least reached people group. And if you study research in psychology, sociology, children between the ages of 4 and 14, they're the most influential. I mean, can be influenced. So if we, as a mission movement of churches, do not focus on this window of children between the 4 and 14 years, they're going to be transformed into the worldview of the world, the minds of the worldview of the rest of the world. If we don't reach children between the ages of 4 and 14 with the gospel and disciple them, we're going to lose a whole generation across culture. And they are the most easy to reach, which is a good thing. So in terms of what the future of missions looks like, we've got to focus on children's Sunday school? Yes. So that means we need to focus on helping local churches and parents, and especially with the virus now, more and more parents are going to be the children's Sunday school teacher and the disciplers of their own children, which is probably a God thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we as church or as missionary workers need to focus on equipping the parents and helping local churches deal with this 4 to 14 age group. Otherwise, the schools are going to get them.
Yeah.
And the philosophies of this world and the politically correctness and the sexuality of this world and the ambitions of this world is going to just draw them more and more away from God. So, but going back to the local church and your role and our role as missionaries and your role as North American churches, the one thing we see, the biggest, one of the biggest challenges is most of the materials coming out for this age group, this least reached people group of 4 to 14 years old, are in English.
Mm-hmm.
All the group curriculums, VBS curriculums, Cook curriculums, little children's books, all in English. So unless we financially steward and focus these financial resources into getting these good materials into different languages,
Mm-hmm.
we will not be able to reach this least reached people group.
Sure.
And we will not be able to disciple the parents who will disciple their children.
True.
So what we're doing as missionaries right now, we are starting to work with some publishers, but we need financial aid to publish into other languages, and we need translators.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, if this virus is not going to allow short-term teams to come, so yes, you can help by printing, the mailing of materials, right? If they're printed in cheaper countries, we need it to be mailed and distributed and printed and published. But we also need to pay translators.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're not going to pay them at the rate of, secular translators, but Christian translators who are willing to do this at a lower fee.
Mm-hmm.
But this all requires mobilization. It requires money.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a large least reached people group, and this is something that we, you asked us in the beginning, what is one of our focus? This is one of our focuses now.
Awesome. I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for your service in the Lord, and I do wish you well.